Alright, in this tutorial, this is our second tutorial, we're going to go ahead and make a piece of cheese from some Illustrator splines. So we're going to import some splines from Illustrator, and then we're going to use that to create an extrude to make a piece of cheese. And then we'll use an array to make 4 of those pieces of cheese so that we could put them on our table in the other project we just did. So first off, I'm going to jump over into Illustrator, and I've already set up a file just with some splines in it. So I'm going to go ahead and open cheese spline. And you can see it's basically just a rectangle with some circles. And so I'm going to go ahead and use the Pathfinder here in Illustrator to just take off to minus the front or delete the front, so it sort of cuts out like a cookie cutter. So I'll hit that. Now we've got our piece of Swiss cheese, our spline, and what we want to do now is go ahead and save it, but we need to save it as Illustrator 8 format. So if I do save as, and I'll just go back into my same file, but we'll call this cheese spline version 8. And everything there is fine, but here's where you need to do this pull down, come on down, save it as Illustrator 8. Cinema 4D, the way Illustrator saves data, to get the compatibility, it has to be saved down to that version. So once you have that, just go ahead and hit OK, and ignore the warnings. You wouldn't want to do this with your normal Illustrator files because you'll lose a lot of the editing functionality that is built into Illustrator these days. But if you go ahead and do it for this, save, then go ahead and save your other version if you'll need the spline again for another thing you're working on. So now I can go ahead and just close Illustrator. And we'll go back into Cinema. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and we can either open just like it's a regular file, or we can merge. And if you merge, that allows you to bring a file into an existing Cinema file that's open. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that. I'm going to go File, Merge, and go to my version 8 spline. Hit Open. Now you can bring it in and scale it if you want to. Also, you want this Connect Splines to be checked. That'll make them all come in as one spline. If for some reason you did not want them all as one spline and you wanted all the circles separately, maybe you had a bunch of drawings on one sheet that you were just bringing in and you were going to move them around, go ahead and then you can uncheck Connect Splines. But for us, we want Connect Splines together. And then we get this one spline that comes in, so it's all merged, and there it is. Now it came in a little off center, so I'm going to go ahead and reposition it. I'm going to go down to my coordinates manager here and just hit 0, tab 0, tab 0, and then hit enter or apply. And now it'll be at our origin. So if we look at it in our 4-way view, you can see it's lined up in the origin. Okay, so now if we want to give it a little depth. So we can use an extrude. And I'll create an extrude there and just drag that spline into it, make it a child of the extrude planet or parent. And then I'm going to go ahead and just name that cheese slice. So now we have our piece of cheese. It's a little thick and it's a little sharp edged, so what we're going to do is go into our extrude modifier here, and we can do a couple things. So first, on the object, this tells how thick or thin your extrusion is. So on here, let's just take it down to 5. And we'll go ahead also into our caps section, and what caps do is whether or not you'll have fronts and backs to your extrusion. So right here, we've got them both set to none, but if we go Start, we can either do a cap, but if we want rounding, we need to go down to fillet cap. Now you can see what happened when I did that was it jumped up in size. Well, to prevent that from happening and to keep your spline true, you want to go ahead and hit Constrain down here, this checkbox. That'll keep our spline staying the same size. If you're bringing in type or something like that, if you're doing an extrude, you definitely want to make sure that's on. For this, it wouldn't really matter that much. What it's doing, it's basically expanding enough so that whatever your bevel setting or your fillet setting is, is that it will not cause any weird polygons. So like here, if we zoom in, you can see those are causing some issues and they're overlapping. So what you have to do is just make sure that your size of your rounding, your fillet, is small enough that it doesn't start overlapping the whole width. So on this one, let's go ahead and bring that radius down, and we can see now we've got a little bevel and it's working, but we also want to make it a little more rounded. So we can do that, maybe 3 and 2. And then let's do the end, same thing, fillet cap. If we rotate around, we can see, oh, it's messed up. So we'll do the same settings. Do 3 so we get a little rounding, and then bring it down so it's got a little edge for us. Now if we zoom out, hit our render, we can see we're getting some nice highlights here, and we've got our piece of cheese. Let's give it a little Swiss cheese color. So I'm going to double click in my material manager down here. Name it, double click that, name it cheese. And then over here in the, I'll select it, go ahead and hit the color and just get a little yellow vibe, maybe. There you go, a little Swiss cheese color. And then you can just click and drag it onto your piece of cheese, and you'll see up here again your materials there. So there we go, got a nice little piece of cheese. On our previous scene we had 4 place settings, or whatever, 4 chairs. So let's go ahead and make our cheese put it into array before we even bring it over. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my array, select an array, and drag my cheese slice in. And if I select the array and start making my adjustments, we only want 3 copies, so we have a total of 4. And we'll expand that out a little bit. But our cheese is standing on end. So you might think, oh, I can just go in here and rotate my cheese and it'll work, but it's not going to work. We need to have our axis lined up. So if we go back to our cheese slice, so I'm going to turn off my array for a minute and go back to my cheese slice. And what we need to have happen is we need that cheese to be lying flat, and then our axis to line up with our world axis. So what we can do, if we go ahead and take the cheese slice and we rotate it, so I'm holding shift down while I rotate to have it stick to 90. So now you'll think, okay, well, it's rotated, it should work. Well, it's still not going to, because it's using the axis of the object, and the array automatically lines it up with the world axis. So we actually have to get in there and change the axis of our extrusion. So if we wanted to keep it editable, we always need the extrusion to be lined up in the world axis. So if I hit here, and we can see it's back. So I'm going to go ahead and re-rotate that back out. So go to my rotate tool, and let's line it back up to the world. So now I'm back 90 degrees. I can tell here my rotation is 0, 0, 0. So my spline itself, though, if I turn off my extrusion, my spline is lined up this way. So what we need to do is rotate our spline, and then we're going to change its axis rotation. So I'm going to rotate my spline so it lays down, rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on my axis tool over here. And what this enables you to do is move your axis, rotate your axis, whatever, and then that way you can use it as a different pivot point, change your alignment to match world coordinates, etc. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this, rotate it forward 90 degrees, and I can see now my axis is lining up with the world. So if I go to my move tool, I can see that's lined up with this. Then unclick that so you go back to moving your object. And now if we go to cheese slice, turn it on, we're going to have some weirdness going on. Because now that we've changed that rotation, we're now extruding, we're still extruding along the Z. So if I click on my extrude, and object, so X, Y, Z, we're extruding along the Z, but now since we've changed our rotation, we want to extrude along the Y. So we can zero this out. Then we can go ahead and give it a 5 in the Y. And now we're back to normal. So we've got our cheese laying in the right plane with its axis with Y pointing up. Now if we turn on our array, we get a nice 4 pieces of cheese laying on the ground, or on the ground plane, I guess. And then if we want to, we can go ahead and maybe call that cheese group. And now if I copy, I just hit Command C, or you can go to Edit, Copy. Then I'm going to go to my window, go back to my table scene, and then I can just Edit, Paste, or Command V. Now my cheese is a little big, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit E for Move, bring it on up, and then we want to go ahead and just go to our top view, hit O to get all that in there, and then I'm going to just go back to my cheese group, which is an array, bring that down, and then go to my actual piece of cheese, hit T for scale, and bring that down as well. So now we've got some smaller pieces of cheese, and I'll adjust that up just a bit. So everyone's got a piece of cheese now. Go back over here, make sure we're where we want to be as far as moving it. So E, grab my axis, so I'm restricting to the Y, and set our cheese right down on the table. Render the viewport, and we've got our 4 pieces of cheese. 4 chairs and a table. Alright, so in the next tutorial I'll go ahead and do the wine glass, and we'll throw some wine in here, and I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, bye-bye.